Hi guys, in this episode of Shri series, we're going to be talking about linear equations and calculating the distance between 2 points, alright? So in the previous video, we had 3 questions where we asked how to calculate the distance between 2 different points. However, I thought in today's video, we still practice a bit more questions. So in other words, students can gain confidence in answering these parts of questions, particularly with calculating the distance, alright? Now, I've done a bit of pre-work here before we got started. So let's refresh our mind. Let's visualize what we want to work out. If we've got 2 points, let's say A and B, and we want to find out the distance, we want to calculate the distance, what do we need to do in that situation? All right, so if you see here, I've got 2 points, say A and B, and the coordinates are x1, y1 for A, and for B is x2, y2. All right, we want to find that length, that distance. That's what we mean by calculating the distance. All right, now in the previous video, I showed to you that we need to write down the formula, because it's good practice to write down the formula and then show you're working thoroughly to get to the right answer. All right, now by now you know the formula for calculating the distance between 2 points is right here. So I've just written it here for you to get started. x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. All right. So let's look at question A. So we've got we've got A and B. And if you look at question A, we've got the points -8, 9 and 1, -3. So I'll just zoom a little bit so you guys can see clearly. All right, the reason why I wanted to include a negative number was to show what effect this will have. And a lot of times in questions, in tests or exams, you will be given negative numbers to work around. And like I mentioned before in the previous videos, you need to understand integers, because when you're adding or subtracting positive or negative numbers, you need to know that topic very well in order to answer this point here. All right, so we've got -8, 9 and 1, -3. I've written down the formula for you. And in the previous question, what I did was I said, you can allocate what x1, x2, y1, and y2 are. So what I would do there is I would say that's x1, y1, that is x2, and y2. All right, so in that way, we've actually substituted it really well. So we've got x1, y1, x2, y2. And it's important to do this practice, especially for those who are initially starting to understand and answering questions involving distance between 2 points, so you can visually understand what points are you going to be substituting. All right, so we've got x2 minus x1, so that's going to be 1 minus -8. So now it's very, very important to take note of the minus. So we've got this minus, which is subtracting the 2 numbers, and then we've got -8, which is actually x1 here. All right, and like I showed in the previous video, I'll just zoom this a little bit. Like I showed in the previous video, the reason why I put a brackets and then minus is to show that that minus is from that number there. All right, so 1 minus -8 squared plus what is y2? -3, -3 minus 9 squared, and then I put my square root there as well. All right, because the square root's there. Then what do we do from there? We work out what's in these 2 brackets. So 1 minus -8, remember the minus and minus become a plus, so that becomes 1 plus 8, and therefore that becomes 9 squared. And -3 minus 9 becomes -12 squared. All right. So that's what we do there. So after we work that out, we need to find the square. So 9 squared is 9 times 9, which is 81. And -12 squared is -12 times -12, which is 144. All right. And then you add them together and find the square root. So 81 plus 144 will be 225. And 225 is a perfect square, and the square root of 225 is 15. All right, so that's the distance between 2 points. A few things I just wanted to mention here. All right, and like I said in the previous video, a lot of students simply add these two numbers and then forget the last step, which is to find the square root. All right. Unfortunately, if you don't find the square root in this question, you're not going to obtain full marks. All right. You will get consolation marks for showing you're working, but at the end, you need to find the square root. All right. The next point I wanted to mention is I did x2 minus x1. I put that as x2 and put that as x1. We can swap the two as well. So you can put that as x2 and y2 and x1 and y1. It is totally up to you as long as you're consistent with the respective pair. So if that is x1, that's got to be y1. If that is x2, that's got to be y2. So please stick to the consistency. All right. The next point I wanted to mention is, again, the effects of negatives. So in order for you to answer these questions, you need to have a solid understanding of integers because you're adding and subtracting positive and negative numbers. All right. Now, let's move on to question B. All right. I'll read it out. -8, -1. And 2, 0. So what do? We'll allocate the point. So that is x1 and that is y1. That is x2 and that is y2. So in that way, I know clearly what I'm going to be substituting. The next thing I'm going to do is write down. The next procedure is to write down the formula because that is going to guide me to answer this question. All right. It's always a good habit to write down the formula. All right. So x2 is 2 and x1 is -8. So x2 minus x1, that's going to be 2 minus -8 squared. And y2 is 0. 0 minus -1 squared. So you can see I've put the brackets to show that what's in the brackets are the negative numbers. So -8 here and -1 there. And also we need to put the square root. All right, that's how we work that out. So 2 minus -8 is 2 plus 8, which is 10. So 10 squared plus 0 minus -1. So that's plus 1. So that's going to be 1 squared. All right, so 10 squared is 10 times 10, which is 100. And 1 squared is 1 times 1, which is 1. And then we need to find out the square root of 101. All right. Now, I can approximate this because I can relate this to what number is this close to that is a perfect square. So in my head, I know that 101 is close to 100 and the square root of 100 is 10. So I know the answer is 10.01, 10.02. However, I'll just get my calculator and work out the square root of 101. And that's going to be, as I said, close to 10. So 10.049. Now I can round that off to 2 decimal places and I'm going to put 10.05. All right. So that's really how we work that out. Now, if you look at question A, the answer was a perfect square because the square root of 225 is 15. If you look at question B, the answer is not a perfect square because the square root of 101 is not going to give you a perfect answer. It's not going to give you a whole number. All right. Again, what do we do here? We write down the formula. We allocated what is x1, y1, x2, and y2, and then we substituted. Like I mentioned as well, the reason why I put negative numbers is to show you what happens when we get negative numbers put together. It can be confusing, but if you have a solid understanding of integers, this becomes pretty straightforward. So that's 2 minus -8 squared, 0 minus -1 squared. When you got two negatives together like that, that becomes a positive. So you add them. So 2 minus -8 becomes 2 plus 8, which becomes 10. And 0 minus -1 becomes 0 plus 1. All right. So 10 squared plus 1 squared, 100 plus 1. And that's going to be 101, and you find the square root, which will give you that. All right. So that is how you calculate the distance between 2 points. What prior topics do you need to know in order to answer this question? You need to have a solid understanding of integers. As you can see, you're adding and subtracting numbers. You need to have a solid understanding of squaring the numbers, like 9 squared. I've seen a lot of students assuming that 9 squared is the same as 9 times 2. But But no, 9 squared is 9 times 9. All right, so you have to have a solid understanding of squaring numbers. The next one is having an understanding of finding the square root, which is a last step when you're solving these questions. Because if you reach at 225 in this case and 101 in this case, assuming that that's the answer, you are wrong. You need to find the square root of this point. All right, so that's pretty much how we work out the distance between 2 points. Thanks for listening, guys. Take care and stay tuned for more videos in Shri series. Bye now.